God has a way of reminding us every day that we're weak. Maybe life gets you worn out and you got to sleep. Maybe illnesses take over your life and you realize how fragile we are. To see many people suffer through COVID and see the kind of health issues it leaves them reminds us of that. A mosquito can bite us and we're struggling. We're weak. We just have a world that tends to impress upon us how strong we are when we're not. We need God. We need His support. We can't function without Him. We need to eat food. He supplies that. We need to breathe. He supplies that. So I pray that this message would teach us how we can be like Paul. When I'm weak, that's when I'm strong. We can learn what that means by studying 2 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4. And I pray that you would join us today so that we can work our way through this text and learn how to live in God's strength as we empty ourselves of ourselves by denying ourselves. And whatever cross God calls us to pick up, we pick it up and experience His power working in us, growing in us for His glory and His honor. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Stay tuned to this. We need to learn this. We need to grow in this. And we need to become perfected by it. Thanks for listening. If I came to you today and I said to you today that Jesus was weak, it would sound like heresy. And if I were you, I would think it's heresy. But Jesus was weak while He was on earth. Stay with me. Don't shoot me yet. When Jesus was on earth, He needed to eat. He would say, go find me something to eat. When Jesus was on earth, in a storm, tell you how tired He was. In a storm, this is how tired He was. He would sleep in the boat in a storm. I tell you, He was physically exhausted. When you look at Jesus Christ, while He was on earth, Jesus Christ would literally say to the disciples, I need some time to rest. When Jesus was on earth and He was tempted by Satan, 40 days fasting, tempted by Satan, Jesus Christ would say, hey, I need the angels, Matthew chapter 4, to minister to me. So God sent Him angels to minister to Him because for 40 days and 40 nights He fasted. And for 40 days and 40 nights after He fasted, Satan showed up, and the first thing Satan would do is challenge Him with food. Satan wasn't no dummy, which means he was looking at the problem. When Jesus Christ was a baby, He needed to be wrapped in clothes, and He needed for a young teenage mom to take care of Him. He needed to be able to be on a donkey and travel, just like any other human being. Jesus Christ needed to be exposed to all of the issues and problems just like we had. Jesus Christ was rejected. He was exposed to that. Foxes have holes. Birds of the air have nests. The Son of Man has no place to lay His head. He was exposed to poverty. Jesus Christ was exposed to loneliness. He was alone in the Garden of Gethsemane, even though He tried to bring some friends along. He was alone. He understands what it's like to have a person you count on as a friend and they start cussing and say they don't know you. He understands what it's like to get to go to church and deal with people who can act crazy. So He turned the tables upside down. He'd been there. He'd been there dealing with Pharisees and Sadducees, leaders who's supposed to know the truth, who spent all day studying the truth, but they would put Him on a cross. Jesus Christ understands what it's like to even come to church and be rejected. So when you look at Jesus Christ, He said there's no temptation subject to man that Jesus Christ had not been exposed to. So when we come to Jesus Christ on earth, we can't say that He was not weak and then say He was fully human. There's a problem. It's called the hypostatic union. Let me get a little theologically deep today, and I hope you stay with me and don't take a nap. Just stick around. It's called a hypostatic union. Jesus Christ, on one hand, would need a donkey to ride into Jerusalem, but on the other hand, He would tell them where to go find a donkey. Because He would know where the donkey is, He would know who has a donkey, and He would know who would send the donkey and who wouldn't mind giving up the donkey. He knew exactly that. Jesus Christ could be the one who would say He needs to eat, but the same person would take 5 loaves, 2 fishes, and break them and make a sandwich and pass it to everybody. Jesus Christ would, on one hand, He would walk around on earth, and on the other hand, He would go up to the Mount of Transfiguration and call down Moses and Elijah. It's called a hypostatic union. He was fully human. He could die on a cross. He was fully God, and he could function the way he wanted to. So he could fall asleep in a boat, and then a few chapters later, he's walking on the water in the midst of a storm. So Jesus Christ was fully human, but yet fully God. And when he was choose to be fully human, he was fully human. And when he was choosing to be fully human, that means he had to die on the cross fully human. So whatever they would do to anybody who was considered by the Romans to be condemned, guess what? Jesus Christ had to deal with it the same way. He had to bear the cross beam. He was beaten, spit upon. He had to carry that fully human. He had to be nailed to the cross fully human, because he couldn't die for humanity if he didn't accept humanity. So Jesus Christ was teaching us, accepting fully human, how to live powered up. How do I live powered up? How do I live knowing when to turn the lights on and when to accept the lights are off, in a way, not in off, but in a way where I have to accept my humanity for what it is. I have to accept that I got to walk somewhere, because I just can't fly. I just can't move. Even though I'm everywhere all at the same time while I'm on earth, I still got to go from one place to the next, to the next, to the next. And he would literally tell the disciples, you will do greater things than me. How in the world could the disciples do greater things than him? It's because Jesus Christ had to go from one place to the next place to the next place, and he didn't go to Europe or Africa to share the gospel. He stayed within the Jewish community because he came to his own, even though his own did not receive him. So Jesus Christ showed that he was limited while on earth, even though he was fully Christ. But the disciples will go into all the world and preach the gospel, so they will do greater things. So understand, in John 14, that's what he means, because the Bible is showing that Jesus Christ had to accept that he was fully human. And what that meant is caught in this verse to teach us what it's like to be fully human, but yet stay powered up. And I want us to see that we have to accept that process. And so when they are accusing Paul of all these different things in 2 Corinthians, accusing him of being a false teacher, accusing him of this, he doesn't have the authority. Paul says, I get it. I have to live within these limitations because I'm fully human. But I'm going to stay powered up. How do I stay powered up? How do I stay when I'm weak, when I've lost a loved one and the pain just don't go away? How do I continue broke every day, going from paycheck to paycheck, nervous about your job, nervous about sending your kids back to school when you're scared that they get the virus? How do you deal with the fact that you want to be in church but you're scared to come, and God haven't gotten that from you yet? You're still afraid. How do you deal with the fact that you're not too sure where your family is going to be and what's going to go on? And some people you haven't talked to in years because they walked away from your family, and it hurts difficultly. In a difficult way, it hurts. Marriage can be stressed out. You could be jobless, trying to figure out how you're going to stop eating beans and rice. How do you function when you're weak and still be strong? Still not become hopeless. Still not want to faint, and he's telling you to don't grow weary. That's a nice verse, but I'm weary. I'm tired. I'm sick of what I'm going through. I wish I could just walk away, but the Bible keeps telling me I can't walk away. Has he lost his mind? How do you do this? Well, he's telling us in this passage of Scripture today, and I pray that we will study this and allow me to get a little deep, and I will try to work it out as best as I can by first looking at the fact that Christ's weakness became God's strength. Christ's weakness became God's strength. How did that happen? Well, let's take a look at this verse. This verse, it says, for indeed he was crucified because of weakness. Indeed, he was crucified. Watch this carefully. He was crucified. It is all the Roman history, I don't know all of them, but history in Rome would say he was crucified. The issue is the resurrection, not the crucifixion. All the stuff that happened with the crucifixion, there's not an argument that that happened. The issue, when you go into the Near Eastern countries, is not that. The issue is, how did this man get up from the grave? That don't happen. You're dead. They leave you out there. They put you in a place there so you can be up in this cave and stuck in a hole, so that by the time you deteriorate, they take your bones and then they bury you. That's standard around here. What are you talking about? His bones are somewhere here. We just can't find them. That's the issue. So they're always trying to find these bones of Jesus. They've been looking for a long time. What does that tell you? We've been looking for years upon years. I said, well, after a while, if you're looking in your house for your keys for years and you ain't found them and you tore everything up to find them, guess where the keys are not? So why are you still looking? So understand, they are still looking because that's the issue. Jesus Christ was crucified because he was put in a position where he could only do what the flesh does. Which means that when they're going to beat him, he can't just have them disappear like he could. Jesus Christ could have had them just become whatever. He said it. I call on, Satan said it to him. You could call on angels right now. So Satan even knew that. So Jesus Christ could have been there and he could have seen these soldiers doing what they're doing and say, angels, do what you got to do. And they were out of there. He didn't do it because he accepted his humanity. When he's carrying the crossbeam all the way to Mount Calvary, he accepted that. When his back was being torn, he accepted that. When he's on the cross, I still can't prove this theologically, he would say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I was wondering in my mind, what does heaven look like when Jesus Christ is nailed to the cross and he's been beaten and he's been spit upon, a crown of thorns been put on his head, his hands have been impaled, his insteps have been impaled, he's put a sword in his side, and he's on this cross. They try to kill him, but they can't. They can't kill him. He could stay alive if he wanted to. And he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I was always wondering, what is going on in heaven that made Jesus ask for their forgiveness? You see, understand, he accepted his humanity. The problem that he did not have is a problem we have. We struggle with the frailty of our humanity. He accepted it. He accepted that I took on full humanity. I took on all that humanity means, that somebody can have power over me to say, you sit there. Somebody have power over me to say, you're going to get a back torn up and you can't do nothing. Somebody with soldiers could be around me and overpower me and put me with a crossbeam and tell me to walk. They can have the power to do that when I'm human. And I can't stop it. That's why he uses the word crucified here. He is saying he had to accept the power of Roman government, the power of Roman soldiers, the weakness of the flesh when they start to beat on him, and what it does to his flesh, tearing it up, putting a crown of thorns on his head, the pain of it. He had to deal with the fact that spit and the stink of spit is on his face. He had to deal with all of that as a human being. That's why they put the word crucified here. It didn't say when he died on the cross, in weakness he died on the cross. No, in weakness he was crucified. So many times, folks, we look around and we say, I wish I could fight this thing back. God is saying you first have to accept the weakness of the flesh. Got to accept that. That's just the way it is. And look at the second thing he says is, because of weakness. Crucifixion took place because the flesh is naturally weak and you can't do nothing about it. You know, people came to me during COVID. Man, you know, you have to have faith. I never forget preachers. I got these interesting phone calls. You got to have faith, Cannings. You're wearing a mask, man. Have faith and confidence in God. I said, no, I accept that I could get COVID. You believe that. Because the Bible is saying in weakness and crucifixion, he was a weak, that's why there was a crucifixion. If he didn't say, I'm going to be fully human today, there was no crucifixion. You remember when they tried to stone him to death in the temple? And he said, this is not my time. And he disappeared. Couldn't figure out how he got out of there. It's not my time. He's walking around on the countryside, all over the countryside, because they're trying to kill him during those days. And he's saying, not my time. You can't find me. Even if you want to find me, you can't find me. Why? Because Jesus Christ accepted that. And that's why I kept telling those preachers, I said, no. What does the Bible say? Faith comes by what? Hearing. And hearing by what? The Word of God. It's not guesswork. I will give you all you need for life and godliness. 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 3 through 4. So every situation we're dealing with, don't lean to common sense. You lean into common sense. I'm not following you. He said that makes your path crooked. So I'm going to stay straight by dropping common sense and picking up the Bible. The Bible is saying His weakness led to the cross. Yep, that's the Bible. He accepted it. That this is my time. This is the time that God has. Galatians chapter 4, verse 4. In the right season and the right time, I must die. This is the time. Before that time, you ain't touching me. Before the right time, you can't touch me. I'm fully God. But when it's the right time, I'm fully human. So you can beat the snot out of me anytime. I'll sit here and take it and do whatever you got to do. I'll be like the lamb that God talked about. It did not scream, holler, fuss. It accepted that this is the way to go. They released the lamb into the wilderness. At the point of the atonement, there was a lamb that was released into the wilderness. Jesus Christ says, I'm the lamb that now comes from the wilderness to die. You see, the first thing we learn in this passage is that Jesus Christ accepted his weakness. Here's the second thing that happens in this passage. Yet he lives. See, that's the paradox. On one hand, crucified. It didn't say die on the cross. Watch this carefully. It didn't say Jesus Christ died on the cross after crucifixion. No. It said he was crucified. That's why he's in weakness. Which means that they're talking about the beating and insult. They're talking about all the different things that were taking place attached to his humanity. He was carrying a crossbeam. He walked. He literally was standing before Pilate like Pilate got power over him. He accepted that Pilates and the courts will come against him and do things against him and talk against him and slander his name. He accepted these high priests and elders and Sanhedrin. He stood before a man's court when he is the court. And he accepted the court of man telling him what he is and what he didn't do and all these different things. He literally would go and accept, going between Felix and Pilate, and all these people tell him what to do. And he accepted all of it. The Roman laws, he accepted the Roman laws. Crucified. But the paradox is, he lives. Nobody is crucified and lives. Because a crucifixion, they don't try to kill you in a crucifixion because they want you to live so you can be crucified. They want you to stay on the cross and feel all the pain. And people would push up because their hands are like this, and if they come down, it will cause their ribs to go in, and they can't breathe, and they suffocate. So they would break the legs. So before they could break the legs, Jesus Christ said, I give up the ghost. In other words, you didn't kill me. That's why his legs were not broken. It's a big thing in the Bible. His legs were not broken because once you break the legs, they can't push up. And when they can't push up, they can't breathe. And when they can't breathe, they die. So before they could break his legs, he said, I give up the ghost. I decide when I lay down my life, and I decide when to pick it up. Because when you think I'm weak, I'm still strong. He lives. But what's the qualification here? What's the qualification here? Because of the power of God. Watch the qualification. He lives, and that word lives in Greek is the word zoe. It means they never stole from him the quality of life and the capacity and the ability that life is. See, because we mess up life. We think that life is money. Life is when I got the American dream. That ain't life. American dream could become a nightmare. Because if you try to go to the American dream too fast, you end up in a lot of debt. If you don't accept searching for a dream within the scriptures, you search for a nightmare. So understand, he's not talking about the American dream. That comes and goes. Life never dies, because who is life? God is life. So since God is life, as I've always said, funerals, people don't die at funerals. They're not dead. But the person is dead. I tell people and when people are really struggling to get over death, when I call them, I tell them, remember these 6, 7 things. Don't ever get them. That's how I got over my mom. People want to know how you just got over your mom like that. It's because I remember these things. It's in the Bible. It's not in the Bible. That's why I taught y'all how to deal with grief. I want to talk y'all what does death mean in the Bible. The person didn't die. To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. So the minute they take their last breath, they're in heaven. They never saw death. Because life, God is life. God sustains life. That's why you can cut down the grass and guess what it does? Grows back. You can go and tear down all the trees around Houston and give it long enough, you see trees popping back up. Because God is what? Life. He's the creator. It comes. You could put fish in an aquarium and they start making fish. You can't stop life from life. Life just keeps being life. You could put flowers out there and they bloom, go off the season, out season, in season, because there's life. God is life. He sustains everything, keeps everything going. He makes everything function every second of every day. That's why no matter what you do, there's another life coming. Somebody could die today and another life is birth. Same second. Can't stop life because God is life. So the Bible is saying he lives in the sense that since God is life and Jesus Christ has the very nature of God, even though he took on death, he didn't die. Because that's why while he is dead, he is down in Hades condemning the angels of Genesis chapter 6, saying, you doomed now. You ain't gonna never leave here. Because you try to change man. You try to change man from being spirit man to demon man. So that when I come, I can't save man because you changed the nature of man. Since you changed the nature of man, I can't die for man because you changed him. So now that you didn't get that done, and I did die for man, and I'm going to get up from the grave, what you tried to do, you didn't get done, so you ain't leaving here. So while his body is in the grave, he lives. So understand, the Bible is saying when we face death, we live. The person didn't die. We need to stop acting like they died. They didn't die. They're in heaven. They ain't thinking about you. Why are you tripping? If we kill ourselves to go to the Bahamas, could you imagine somebody telling you about heaven? Okay? That's why he says he lives. So life is empowered by God. Life is not empowered by the things of this earth. It's empowered by God. So if we are in our weakness, we could find the same life because the same God lives inside of us. And that's what the rest of this verse is trying to get us to see. The rest of this verse is trying to get us to see like Christ who was empowered. Watch the word here. He was not just lives, but he was empowered by God, which means the capacity that God has, the ability that God has, allows Christ to function. Let me put it this way. I can't fly, but in a plane I can. Why? Because I'm experiencing the capacity and the power of a plane to be able to fly even when I can't fly, so therefore I fly. I can't go with, okay, let me be truthful about this. I can't go at 70 miles an hour on a good day. On a good day. That's a nice thing about driving a luxury car. Sometimes you don't even know when you're going 80 miles an hour. I was saying to myself this week, I got 7 grandkids in this car. I need to go slow. It's drizzling. Next thing I look at the speedometer, it was going 85. I said, okay, let me slow this thing down. Got 7 grandkids up in here. Now understand, I can't go that fast, but in a car I can. Because I accept that I need to get to New York within 3 hours. When I accept it, I automatically make moves to a plane. I accept that I need to be in a certain place in an hour and a half. So because I can't literally walk there in an hour and a half or run there in an hour and a half, I accept the ability of the car. Because I accept it. We do that with doctors. We do that with medicine. I can't get rid of this headache on my own. So I accept that Aleve may do it, Tylenol may do it, aspirin may do it, because I accept I can't get rid of the headache on my own. So since I accept it, I experience the ability of that medicine. Jesus Christ said, I know God. I know the ability of God, the capacity of God, that he is everywhere all at the same time, powerful all the time. So I could be on this cross, I could decide to let them beat the socks off of me, and I could decide to give up my life because I know the capacity of God. I know the ability of God. So since I know the ability of God, I can lay my life down, because when I lay it down, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit will take it up again. So I don't have to worry about laying my life down, because I know their capacity is to get me back up whenever the time comes. So in 3 days when the time comes, ain't nobody can stop me. You could put a big tombstone in front of it. It's not going to stop me. You could put two soldiers out in front of it. They can't stop me. You could do whatever you want to do. It can't stop me. Because when I decide to get up from the grave, I can get up. Why? Because I am the resurrection. I could go to Lazarus 4 days after he's dead and wake him up. Because that's who I am. I could see a little child dead and pick them up. I could see this young man whose mom is crying out of her mind, and I could raise that young man back to life because I am the resurrection. So since I am the resurrection, do what you got to do, because you can't take my life. You could only take my body. Because the body is weak. And I accept my body is weak. So take what you could take, but you can't take life. So I could always get another body, glorified body, because you can't take it permanently. Paul would say, when Christ would not stop beating on him, look at chapter 12. Paul would say, when Christ cannot stop him beating on him, Paul would say, he would say this, therefore, verse 9 wouldn't hurt you. And he was said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. In other words, if in your weakness you mess up, my grace supplies you forgiveness of sins. So you got no excuse not to get back up. This is the first part of two messages that we need you to come back to. First part of two messages. So you can always order this and have the whole series so that we can learn throughout this series how we can remain strong when we're weak. Or you could go to Power Walk Ministries and become more engaged. But I want you to come back to the second part of this message, because by coming back to the second part of this message, we understand this concept that is being taught in 2 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4. We learn this concept that Paul had to come and learn, and Paul had to grow in, because Paul comes well-educated, well-trained, 9 languages, Pharisee of Pharisees, Hebrew of Hebrews. He came prepared. And God had to teach him how to count it all loss for the glory of God. So come back and we grow together through this passage, so the weaker we recognize ourselves to be, the greater our dependency on God, the more we experience the power of God as we grow spiritually. Thank you for listening.
During such uncertain times, when our health or our ability to earn can cause much fear and anxiety, how can we have a faith that is real, powerful, and pleasing to God? That's exactly what Pastor Paul Cannings encourages us to develop in his book titled, Why Can't Mondays Be More Like Sundays? It's available on our website at powerwalkministries.org. And while you're there, be sure to browse through the books as well as audio sermons by Dr. Cannings. There are many who are struggling in various ways these days, and we hope you'll be able to find some encouraging resources for yourself or for friends and loved ones.